people, welcome to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This is an art-related channel. I usually talk about my free not safe for work webcomic, Dark Horse. Links are down in the description. But I also discuss other art-related topics targeting an adult audience. This is my monthly Q&A where I answer questions for my patrons and Subscribe Star member, as well as any questions I can catch up on from commenters or readers of my comic. I'm gonna try to keep this video short. I've been kind of keeping them a little bit shorter of late, but if any of these topics seem interesting to y'all watching out there, please let me know down in the comments and I can maybe elucidate more upon what my thoughts are or my process. So let's start with question number 1. What does your new chair look like? It looks like this, and I want to seriously thank my patrons and Subscribe Star member for their support. I am able to get better equipment because of their support, and that helps me with my art, obviously. So I thank them very much for their support. Seriously, it's so appreciated, because otherwise, I mean, y'all heard how long I have my squeaky chair, those of you who have been around for a while. So thank you. Question 2. When can we expect the next Whimper in the Dark post? Well, at time of recording this, I have finally got my Erradia Beat submission completed. Just got it done with 2 hours to spare last night, which was Tuesday, October 25th. I have a couple obligations for Patreon and Subscribe Star, which I need to complete. I've got a pin-up and I've got a wallpaper. I think I want to do another blog. A lot of times I'll do like one blog, but recently I've been doing 2 blogs, so I expect that I should have at least 1 page for Wind, as I call it, Whimper in the Dark, complete by October 31st. I'm hoping to get it done by then, and if I can get more done, that would be great, but I'm not gonna give myself too much pressure because a lot's been going on this year. But thank you for the question. Question number 3. What's the best ink brand? I don't know that I'm qualified to answer this. I think that there are a lot of good brands out there. I can tell you what I've used in the past, and I can tell you what I use now. I haven't used this one in a long time, but in the past I've tried the Higgins Black Magic ink or Magic Black ink. I can't remember the name of it. And just for my purposes, I didn't, at the time I was still kind of new with the nib, I think. So I personally don't buy that one anymore, but I also don't buy like the Dr. P.H. Martin's India ink anymore because I'm not entirely certain, where I draw the line on like the product ingredients, because while if you don't know anything about India ink, it's made out of shellac, which is a leftover byproduct of the breeding process for a certain beetle, which I think is primarily in India, hence the name India ink. I don't know enough about the process to know if I agree with it morally, and also I don't know whether or not the people are being exploited. Like, I've tried to do some research in the past, and I've talked about it in a long ago video on this channel, but I don't know enough about it, so I don't at the time feel comfortable using it. However, that has no bearing on whether or not the product is good. I liked that product, but I don't use it anymore. Recently, I've been using, and I think I've talked about this in past videos. I know I have. I've mentioned it, definitely. I currently use the Zig Kuretake Black Ink 60. It's important that it's the Black Ink 60. It's technically for a more amateur level. It's a quick drying ink, basically, but it's for specifically doing manga. And the reason why I buy it, and I like it just as well as I like the regular Ink 60, I think is the regular type. But I like it just fine. It works perfectly for my purposes. I can use washes. It does dry a little bit quicker, as it indicates on the bottle, than the regular quote-unquote professional grade Sumi ink. But for me, that's not really an issue, because when I work on comics like Wind, or if I want to do something that's in black and white, if that ink is thick at the bottom, I just add a little bit of water and I use it as a wash. So personally, I like the Zig Kuretake Black Ink 60. I use it because they use a synthetic glue. I don't like to use the other type anymore because they do still use animal product in it, and that's against my personal ethics. But this works perfectly fine for me. I mean, y'all see how much I get done, and I'm probably getting ready to start maybe my 3rd or 4th container of it. I usually order it from deleter.com if anyone's interested. I'm not sponsored, by the way. I'm just talking about my personal experience, and I like it. I think it's pretty smooth. Again, it is pretty quick drying, but if you know me, I'm always flying by the seat of my pants, so I like the fact that it's quick drying because I gotta get shit done, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that answers the question thoroughly. If you want me to go into more detail, just ask down in the description and I'll talk a little bit more about it. I may talk more about it later anyway, but not in this video. Question 4. Why do you think subscription-based software is a ripoff? This can be like an entire video, and I might go into more detail about it in another video, maybe if I feel like it and I have time. But primarily, it's a combination of several things, and if you go around the art community, I mean, you can probably, if you watch other artist videos, you'll get plenty of information on subscription-based versus just buying the software flat out. Just for a little bit of context, this is because I quite often mention, or you might see in my screen recorded videos, that I'm using an older version of Photoshop, and I might have mentioned that my partner had to tinker with my computer to make sure that it still functions, because with one of the Mac updates they made it so that I don't know why, but it's like it's not compatible with the computer, so he had to do all kinds of jumping through hoops and special code to get my Photoshop to function on my laptop. Which is an old laptop, but like they had updated it. Anyway, that's kind of the context behind, I think I'd made an off comment about how subscription-based softwares are kind of a ripoff in my opinion. And without going into too much detail, in the song The Last DJ, Tom Petty really sums up my feelings on this whole topic.
As we celebrate mediocrity, all the boys upstairs wanna see how much you'll pay for what you used to get for free.
When I quote this song, when I quote that lyric, what I mean is, I come from a different time period than today, obviously. When I was young, when you bought a software, obviously technology wasn't, they didn't have planned obsolescence. Technology is intentionally engineered to be obsolete, which to me and my personal ethics, that's so incredibly wasteful, and it's also very detrimental to the environment. We won't get into the ethics of some of the mined materials that are still mined by literal slave and child labor today. That's too heavy of a topic, I think, for this video. But in addition to that, it's, to me, that model of business is designed to be predatory towards customers as well. And I come from a time where you could buy the software and it would be several years before a new software would be engineered to replace that. And by the time they did that, there were new features and improvements, like leaps and bounds and improvements that would entice you to buy the new software. Whereas if you're just buying a subscription-based thing, in my opinion, you're paying annually or monthly or however it's set up, whatever the subscription requirements are, for the exact same thing. And it's like, you used to be able to buy this and you'd have it until whatever, whenever the computer eventually becomes obsolete. Eventually I had to replace my 1999 Gateway computer with a 2005 Mac, which was, in 2010 anyway, so it was several years old. Actually, it might have been an older Mac than that. It's the one that was in Zoolander. I don't even remember when that came out. Maybe I replaced it with an older computer. I don't know. Anyway, that's digressing. But this isn't to say that I don't agree with having to pay for upgrades or new tools that are created, add-ons. That is new programming that somebody deserves to get paid for. So I'm not going to go into details about Clip Art Studio, but if you're in the art community, there was like recently a big stink about how they are flirting with subscription-based services, but they still allow you to buy just the base software, one-time purchase, and then you just don't get any extras. I'm not going to go into the controversy because to a degree, yes, I get what people are saying, but to another degree, if you want to keep getting updates, yes, you do need to, I suppose, pay for the subscription, and not updates in the sense of like allowing it to function on your device, but I mean updates like, again, add-ons, new things. If you want that, I think you should have to pay for it. But if you're just using the exact same tools that you bought, I don't feel you should have to pay for it. I hope that delineation makes sense, but that's kind of my thoughts on the software in a nutshell. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have to pay for new things, new tools, new gadgets that are, you know, available and developed and created to make your art life easier. I'm saying you shouldn't have to pay for the exact same thing. You're not getting any updates. You're just, you know, you're just using the same thing that you've had. I think that is a ripoff. So I hope that clarifies my stance. I could do an entire video on it, but I think the art community, if you just Google it, people have, like, you know, flogged that horse to death. And I'm not sure that, you know, I only use it to color, hence why I'm still using my Photoshop. I really only use it to color or make vectors, which is a new thing that I'm learning. I'm going to do a video on. But I really don't use it for anything other than that, so it's like, I don't need to get the new one. I would rather keep using my old shit than have to pay annually or monthly even for something that I really don't need because I'm primarily a traditional artist. Okay, question 5. How do you handle art block? I will try to keep this short. I could do an entire video on it. I will keep this abbreviated though. I don't normally get art block, but I find that when I do, it's generally speaking because I, 1, have no plan, 2, am entering a space in which I lack skill, such as action scenes. I have a lot of problems with. I struggle with them. And 3, I have a lack of time. These are the things that I've observed about myself. It doesn't mean that any of these suggestions are going to be applicable to everyone across the board, but these are the things that I do when I come across this issue, which personally isn't very often, but that's because I almost always have things thumbnailed out and very clearly delineated how I want them. Due to personal emergencies with my family this year, I haven't had time to thumbnail properly the act that I'm working on, Dark Horse, which is Awakenings. So normally I have a plan, and that's why I, generally speaking, don't have art block, at least as far as I can tell, but this is what I did to solve it. First, I attempted to just power through it. I tried to come up with a plan, and I'm not gonna lie, I got frustrated and threw away several pages and lots of artwork, had to redraw things several times, and powering through. But this was a motivator because I'm obligated to Patreon and Subscribestar to upload pages, and also to, you know, hold myself accountable over on Webtoon, which is where this is posting first, aside from like Patreon and Subscribestar. So it was a motivator, but just powering through alone didn't work for me. So the next thing I did was my go-to. I went to inspiration. I picked up my JoJo mangas. I picked up Rigveda. I looked at Sailor Moon. I was like, how am I going to do this action scene? And that inspired and kept me motivated, but it didn't answer my question on what my block is. How am I going to do this page? I was intimidated a little bit by the professional level of these comics because I'm not particularly good with speed lines yet. It's something that I need to focus on. I've been working on focused lines, but I haven't gotten to a point where I'm ready to, you know, perfect using speed lines. So while, again, that was motivation and inspiration, didn't solve my problem. So the next thing I did was I went to a Discord forum that is comprised of my peers, and I don't normally bitch and whine there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with bitching and whining. I'm just saying I normally don't complain about this topic. So going there and kind of expressing my feelings among other individuals who experience that as well really helped me at least in my headspace, because it's a way to connect with someone that's experiencing like the same thing you are. So they also kind of gave me some suggestions, but primarily was just kind of a shoulder to cry on and help me feel, you know, like I'm not alone, like I'm validated in being frustrated with this, and I guess garnering the empathy that I felt I needed at that time. So that was my next step. And some of them, they didn't really have, at that point, they didn't have too many suggestions for me other than to assure me that I needed to get out of my own headspace, which was probably a good suggestion because it led me to looking up tutorials on how to do action scenes again. It's been like over a year, or a year at least, since I've done this, and I haven't really had time to focus on it, so it made me realize that I need to conquer this and I need to look at what other people suggest. So I'm going to put a couple tutorial links down in the description, especially Mark Crilley. Mark Crilley, oh my god, I love that guy. I buy every book that I can get my hands on. There's a couple I don't have, but he has helped me so much with his education and his tutorials. But essentially it boils down to action and reaction. You know, keep it short, don't make it unnecessarily long unless that's your goal, unless you're a fight, you know, that's the whole point of your comic. And, you know, keep the dialogue down to a minimum. Obviously I'm going to have Kasuma taunting Odysseus, but these suggestions really help me start to formulate a plan and figure out what my issue was with my new thumbnails. So that led me to 5, as I was saying: planning, thumbnailing, figuring it out. I finally was able to boil down what my block was and get a page out that's not perfect, but it was much better than what I had been doing, and it really helped push the story forward. And now that led me to this week's page, which connected me to the pages that I've already done where I had studied and was happy with those pages. So it really helped bridge the gap and get me motivated to work again. That's how I got through my art block. I hope that if any of you all out there are having issues, that it will help you also. But again, disclaimer, we're not all the same. Everybody is their own individual, and so what worked for me might not necessarily work for you, or it might work for you, but you have to have it click, and you have to come to it in your own way, on your own terms. So yeah, those are my suggestions though, and I hope that guides anyone to their own enlightenment on what their issues are if they're having art block, if you're having art block. And that's all for this month. I've got more questions, but I'm gonna have to get to them next month. This is a long enough video. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions of your own, leave them down in the comment section. If you feel like supporting the channel, I've got extras, blogs, and stuff like that over on Subscribestar and Patreon. I have a couple different tiers. Links are down in the description. Otherwise, I will be back with more art videos next week. Until then, peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.